Hey, what is going on, everybody? So in today's video, we're going to be working on a 2017 Porsche Boxster Cayman 982. And this is my jacking method. This is my Egyptian method of how I lifted the car. Pretty much what I did was I lifted the front right past the boot, and then I put about 3 pieces of wood under the front tires. Excuse me. And then I'm going to lower the car down from there. So I'm just kind of showing you the jack point. And you can see there I put a piece of wood up to kind of distribute the weight evenly. And that helped a lot. And then I lowered it onto the wood. Then I went around to the rear and I just lifted it up on the rear chassis brace right under the stiffest point of the chassis. And then this part's pretty straightforward. We're just going to take some jack stands and put it on our jack mounts right there. And then lower the car. So the car is a little up in the front, then a little up in the rear. And then I just went back and forth. You can see right there, that's kind of how I did it. And once the car was balanced or leveled, like up in the air and leveled, then I was able to work on it pretty comfortably. Excuse me. All right, so here's the under panel, or the underside of the car, and we're going to be removing that under panel right there. That's what we're kind of working our way towards. But this is just to kind of give you a look at what is underneath the Porsche and everything like that. It's pretty flat, so in terms of aerodynamics, Porsche did a really good job on that. I like that a lot. But you can see there off to the right, well, that's what we're going to be working on, and then off to the left. And we're just going to take that panel off, and that'll give us access to our oil drain bolt. So that's going to be what we're going to do now, is just remove this panel to get to that oil drain bolt. And it's going to be, we're going to need a T25 Torx bit and a 10mm socket. So there's going to be some T25 screws, and then we're going to have some 10mm nuts that we're going to have to remove. And once we're all done with that, we can just sit our panel down, and you can see right there, that's our oil drain bolt right there. And it's kind of recessed, so the trick that I used to get it is I just used a size 8 hex socket, but I left the socket in the bolt. And it allows you to get the bolt and get out without getting too messy. And that was the whole goal of this, oil change, was to get out of this oil change as clean as possible. And so far I'm doing a pretty good job, but we'll see how things turn out later. But that's the bolt right there. You can see that the socket, the hex bit, held the bolt nicely, so that's good. All right, now if you go up to the top and remove your oil fill cap, more oil will come out. See, just like that. So that's something that you can do, but it's up for debate whether that's effective or not. All right, so you can see that maybe Porsche is low-key telling us something, and hopefully those tripods aren't made by Porsche, or those tripods are coming to Earth anytime soon. So, all right, now we're just going to put that bolt back in the oil drain pan. And here I tried. I was really trying to make this a clean oil job, but you can see right there it's getting messy. But anyway, yeah, so just go ahead and put that bolt in for now, but don't tighten it because we're going to have to come back and get it later. So just keep it in there, pretty snug, and then clean it up and stuff. All right, so now on to the meat of this whole oil change, and it's this oil filter. Now there's a lot of controversy and talk about this oil filter, but it's not that difficult to remove or get to. Now this right here is your oil funnel, your oil filter funnel, and I gotta hand it to Porsche. Thanks, Porsche, because that is a really clever idea, especially for where the oil filter is located. So pretty much what we're going to do is we're going to take a hose with a 5/8 inch inside diameter. And we're going to run the hose up under the chassis brace, through the chassis brace, and onto the funnel. Excuse me, onto the funnel. And then we're just going to seat it onto the funnel. And then from there, we're going to remove our oil filter. Now, I know what you're saying. I need to replace the axle. I know. That'll be for another video. But for now, let's just stay focused on this oil change and not focused on my $100,000 cinema camera for this oil change video. All right, so back to the hose. Now, we're going to go ahead and remove or at least loosen our oil filter. So here I just took a 17-inch one-piece extension and a universal joint, and then I attached that to a 74 millimeter oil filter cap. Now, this oil filter cap I use for the Mercedes and it fits perfectly, but the Porsche oil filter has a radius at the top, so the cap doesn't quite grab it as well. It still grabs it, but you have to kind of like really stay tight. So that's just something to keep in mind. You can see how, it's really easy to slip off, but you can get the job done with it. But if you are shopping for an oil filter cap, look for a deep one. Now you can see right there the oil is coming out of the hose, and that was just from loosening the oil filter cap. That's what you want to do. You don't want to just go ahead and remove the oil filter. You want to loosen the oil filter and then let the oil just drain down through the hose for about a few minutes. And then after that, you're still not out of the woods, okay? Because there's still some oil in the oil filter. So you got to be careful when you're removing the oil filter, okay? All right, so now that we have the oil filter removed, you can see what it looks like. You can see how at the bottom there, it's got that radius and everything like that. So watch, yeah, see like there's more oil in the filter, even though it drained out through the funnel. So you got to be careful. It's like those horror movies, where like you think you've killed the bad guy and then the bad guy comes back for another scare. Well, this oil filter, it's got like 2 scares, because even after that, when you're removing the oil filter, the filter element, still some more oil. All right, so you can see there, that's what the oil filter housing looks like. There's the funnel. You can see a little oil on that nut right there, and that's normal. Like when you put the oil filter back on and everything like that and you tighten it, you're going to see some oil on your chassis and you're going to think, oh my gosh, I didn't tighten the oil filter, but you did. It's just oil left over from the funnel. So make sure you clean your funnel after you install your oil filter so that you don't get any kind of like residual oil left over and leaking onto your chassis. All right, so now we have our oil filter and we're going to go ahead and replace it with a new one. And before you do that, lay down a clean piece of plastic on your workbench. Some people like to use cloth. I don't, because once cloth gets messy, that's it. So I like plastic because you can clean plastic pretty easily. All right, so here's our new filter, and you can see this bottom part with the teeth and then the top part with the nipple. Or for all you SolidWorks and Fusion 360 people, that's an extruded hole. But we're going to just keep it simple and just call it a nipple. So that part goes on top and you get a nice fresh O-ring. I like to keep my old O-rings, but that's just me. So we're going to put this dirty filter in the box and dispose of it properly later. But for now, we're just going to put it in the box. And you can see right here what I'm talking about with the plastic protective layer over your workbench. You can just clean it up. It's really easy. All right, we're going to be using liquid moly for our oil, and any A40 oil is fine. Doesn't have to be liquid moly, so you don't feel like you're restricted or limited to just one brand of oil. Whatever A40 spec it is, but I know someone in the comments is going to be like, oh, it needs to be A40 spec 00001. And like, oh, whoops. All right, so you can see I like to use clean oil when I lube up my O-ring. That's just me. Call it superstition, whatever. But um, it doesn't, do what you want to do as long as you put a little bit of oil on your O-ring. There's the old one. I like to keep the old O-rings, and then there's the new one right there. And we're going to just go ahead and put that on there. And just slide it on, and make sure it sits into that groove that's designed for the O-ring. Make sure it's not sitting on the threads, which sometimes when you're not paying attention, it can happen. So keep that in mind. Just kind of pay attention. All right. So here's our new oil filter. And then remember, this part goes on the top. And then the teeth part right there are going to go on the bottom. All right. So that is what we're going to slide in right there. You can see that, and then also we're just going to make sure that it seats all the way. So you're going to push it in until it stops, but we're not going to try to force it any more than, once it stops, So that's that. And you can see right there that the oil filter is seated well. Okay, so now we're going to go grab our oil drain bolt, and we're going to put a new washer on it. This is a crush washer, so we're going to put a new crush washer on the bolt. And remember, we want the flat side facing up. So you can see that I flipped it over, and now the flat side is facing up. And that is just going to ensure pretty good mounting contact to the oil pan. All right. So in this part right here, you want to just kind of be patient with installing the oil filter, because it can be a little difficult or challenging to get it to fit again. But just be patient and you'll get it. And then again, just make sure that that oil filter cap is seated properly. Now, if you're wondering if you need to increase or do any mathing for torquing down the filter with a long extension, you don't. 25 Newton meters is the spec torque. All right, so we're just going to go ahead and put that drain bolt back in with the new crush washer. And then we're just going to wipe everything up and get it nice and clean. And then we're going to torque down this drain bolt to 50 Newton meters. And remember, we don't want too much torque though. And remember, that's 50 Newton meters. So it doesn't take a lot, Really, you can just kind of snug it up. But torque whenever possible, because, it is aluminum on aluminum, and things can start to strip really easily if things get out of control. All right, so now we're going to remove our hose here from our funnel. We don't want to be driving around with our hose sticking out. It's tacky and embarrassing. So make sure you remove your hose. All right, and then just drain it into your oil drain bucket. All right, here comes the home stretch of this oil change. And now we're just going to open our oil fill cap and pour our oil in. And now you can see right there it says Porsche A40. That's what I'm talking about. Mobil 1 makes good oil, but anything A40, I think up until 2025. Leave a comment in the comments if I'm wrong on that, but I think 2025 is when it changes to like a new spec formula, and it's not backwards compatible after that. So once you change to the new spec, you can't go backwards or something like that. All right, so we have our oil put in, and it's 5.7 liters or 6 liters. You can see that these are like 0.1 liter increments, and I went to 5.7, but you can go to 6, and you'll see what I'm talking about in a moment, because the car, it can take up to 6, but if you want to play it safe, then 5.7 is the way to go. And I played it safe with 5.7. But you'll see later what I'm talking about. Now, we're just going to keep this area clean and wipe everything down, because this oil fill area shares the same compartment with where you could put your luggage or, something fancy that you don't want dirty. So it's very important to keep this area as clean as possible so that we don't contaminate other things within the shared space. All right, now on to the final part of this oil change. Now, whatever computer you use should be fine. I'm using an Autel. So pretty much I'm just going to go into the special functions, the oil filling, and it has its own, like oil filling procedure on making sure that the oil fill is correct. But once you do this once and you're comfortable with how much oil you need to put in the car, the only time you're going to use this computer is to reset the oil light. All right, so now you can see here we're going to start the engine. And there's a lot of talk about, drive the car around after an oil fill and then check it, but you can just let the car idle until it gets up to 90 degrees Celsius. And you can see right there off to the right-hand corner or right-hand side, it says it needs to idle until it gets above 90 degrees Celsius. Right now it's at 19, so you don't need to really drive the car around. But if you want, then, do what makes you happy. All right, so we're going to go to oil measurements, and you can see right there it says it's unavailable, and that's because the engine's cold and we have fresh oil in there. All right, now we're at 70 degrees Celsius, 71 degrees. So we're still waiting to hit that above 90 degrees Celsius mark. So we're just going to keep waiting and waiting and waiting. 25 years later. All right, so now we're at 90 degrees Celsius. So we're approaching that above 90 degrees Celsius mark. And you can see that it's almost ready to go. And then once it's ready, it's going to do a 150-second countdown, or it has to idle for 150 seconds. But here's something I want to show you. You can see right there the oil fill level is low, but that's normal. Don't panic and add more oil because it's going to expand later. So that's something to keep in mind. Just remember, it's going to expand later. And you can see right there, it's kind of creeping up. It's kind of creeping up. So, but right there, you can see that it's going to do the countdown for 150 seconds. And then once it reaches 150 seconds, then it's going to take a measurement. And you can see right there that the minimum is 100% and then maximum's 200%. And I'm at 170 and I need 0.3 liters. So if it's a positive refill value, then it means that I need to add some oil. And then if it's a negative value, it means that I've overfilled it. So I'm positive by 0.3, meaning that's the 0.3 that would take me to 6 liters. So like I said, you can put 6 liters in the car, but 5.7 is fine. As long as you're just between 150 and you're not going, as long as you're at 150 and below 200, you should be good. So 170 is more than fine for where we're at. Excuse me. All right, so now we're going to go back to oil measurement, and you can see that the oil level is a lot higher. That's because the engine oil is warm. And you can see right there I'm at 170.7 and I still have 3 liters left, or 0.3 liters left, to fill. So like I said, don't panic just when you see a low bar. All right, so we're going to get out of that and we're going to go back to the beginning and we're going to reset the oil light or the oil indicator. So we're going to go back to, the beginning. Boxster Cayman 982 2017, and then from there we're going to just start fresh. We're going to go back to our hot functions, oil reset, auto oil reset, and then we're going to just go to inspection, hit selected, and then we're going to hit oil service and hit selected, and then we're just going to execute those functions, and then that's going to reset our oil interval. And after we're done with that, we can hit exit, and then we're not going to do reset maintenance interval because we want to keep that so that we're reminded when to do other things and we don't forget. And then all of a sudden, we're on the side of the road with our hose sticking out. So we're going to keep that. And then after that, we're all done. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and I hope that you've learned a lot in this video. And if you have, be sure to hit that like button. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. It really helps the channel grow. And with that said, I know that the Porsche community is big on racing and doing track events and things like that. So if you're a solo driver and you go out to the track by yourself, let me know in the comments, and I would love to come help you out if you're in the area. I know, as a former racing driver myself, I know how it can be when you're just at the track by yourself and you're trying to do everything. You're trying to get to the grid on time because the track just they move fast, and it can be a lot. So having an extra pair of hands just to record lap times, help with tire pressure, all that kind of stuff can really go a long way. So if that's you, leave a comment down below and we can set something up, and I'd love to help you out. All right, so on that note, thank you guys so much for tuning in again today, and I'll see you guys in the next video.